George was 68 years old. His wife Betty was 66. They had been married for 42 years, since a small ceremony on a Saturday afternoon in the spring of 1984. There was no honeymoon flight. They drove to Gatlinburg, Tennessee, got rained on their first morning, found a diner that made good biscuits, and decided it was perfect. A photo from that trip sat on the bookshelf in their living room. Betty was smiling broadly. George was standing beside her, looking like he wasn't sure where to put his arms. She still teased him about it sometimes. He had never gotten comfortable with cameras. 42 years, 2 children, both grown and gone. George had worked the same manufacturing job for over 2 decades, before retiring at 62. Betty had run the household since they were married. Nothing dramatic had ever really happened to them. They argued sometimes and it didn't last. They were tender sometimes and it wasn't loud. They just lived. Morning came, they had coffee, the day passed, evening came. They sat together in front of the television until one of them fell asleep. That had been their 42 years. Quietly accumulated, ordinary, and entirely theirs. The trouble began 2 years ago in the spring. George went in for his annual physical, and came home with a prostate cancer diagnosis. It was early stage. The doctor said surgery would handle it completely. No spread, nothing to panic about. That evening George told Betty at the dinner table, in the same calm voice he used for everything. Prostate cancer. Early. Surgery next month. Betty set down her fork. She did not say anything for a while. George said it wasn't serious. Betty heard him. She still didn't eat much after that. When he fell asleep, she sat at the kitchen table alone until past midnight. She didn't cry. She just sat there. On the day of the surgery, Betty waited at the hospital for 6 hours. She bought coffee from the machine in the lobby and poured most of it out twice. She could not read. She could not focus on her phone. She just waited. When George came out of recovery, she moved to his side and took his hand. He was still mostly under from the anesthesia, his eyes barely open. But when she took his hand, he closed his around hers. No words. Just that. Recovery went better than expected. Within a month, George was walking the neighborhood on his own. The doctor said the numbers looked good. Betty exhaled for the first time in weeks. She thought they were through the hard part. But around that same time, George began to change. At first, she assumed it was the recovery. He went to bed early and alone. If she moved close, he shifted away, almost imperceptibly. She told herself he was still healing and being careful. 2 months passed. 3 months passed. One night she lay down beside him and reached for him without thinking. The moment her hand touched his back, she felt him stiffen. Even in sleep he felt it. She pulled her hand back. She lay in the dark and did not sleep. This happened more than once. More than several times. George found ways to put distance between them that were so quiet and natural that calling attention to them felt strange. Betty checked herself again and again for what she might have done wrong. She could not find it. The distance was simply there. By 6 months in, it had settled into something permanent and unnamed. They still ate together, still ran errands together, still sat on the same couch in the evenings. Nothing had changed from the outside, but something essential was gone. Betty woke at night and lay still. She did not dislike George. She loved him, but she felt like he had disappeared somehow. She did not know who to say that to. Their daughter would have worried. Her friends would not have understood the specific shape of it. She lay in the dark and turned it over alone. The nights were very long. A little over a year after the surgery, George said he was going to sleep in the guest room. His back was bothering him. Betty said okay. She said it too quickly. Later she thought she should have said something else. She let it go and it went. 42 years in the same bed, and it ended that quietly. She watched him carry his pillow down the hall and did not say anything. Sleeping alone was strange. The bed was too big. She stared at the ceiling and thought about whether she was supposed to bring it up. She did not know how. He had not said to stay away, but he moved away whenever she came close. She turned the problem over and over and found no good way in. Late one evening in the spring, Betty cut up some fruit and brought it to the living room. They sat together and watched television. A documentary was on, an elderly couple talking about their 50 years of marriage. The camera showed them sitting side by side, holding hands. Not making a point of it. Just holding hands, the way you do when it has become as ordinary as breathing. Betty watched it and her eyes filled. She didn't realize it was happening until it had. She started to wipe her face and George noticed. "Why are you crying?" he said. Betty was going to say it was nothing. Then she didn't. "I don't really know," she said. "I just feel like you've been somewhere else. Like I've been alone in the house with you for a year. And I can't figure out what I did." George turned off the television. He sat without speaking for a long time. Betty waited. The room was dim. Outside the window the spring air was moving through the trees. "You didn't do anything," he said. More silence. Then, "It's me. I'm the one who did this." The words came slowly. He sat with them for a while before each one. Then he told her. The surgery had changed things. There were side effects from prostate surgery that his doctor had described beforehand. And that had come true for him. He had not been able to talk about it. He was ashamed of it, he said. He did not want her to see it. He had been afraid she would be disappointed in him. So he had put distance between them before she could find out. He was not angry at her. He had never been angry at her. He was just scared of what she would think. Betty sat with this for a moment. Over a year of sleeping in separate rooms. Of reaching for him and feeling him go still. All of it because he was afraid she would be let down. "George," she said, "it was never about that. I didn't care about that. I was scared because you felt like you were gone. You were right here and I couldn't find you." He looked at her. His eyes were red at the corners. "I didn't know how to say it," he said. "I've never known how to say things like that. I guess I just went quiet instead." Betty reached across the couch and took his hand. He did not pull back. For the first time in over a year he did not pull back. They talked for a long time that night. George told her the details of what had changed, the things he had been carrying silently for 15 months. He got red in the face while he said it. A 68-year-old man. Red in the face in front of his wife of 42 years. Betty looked at him. She thought of a photograph she had of him from their honeymoon, standing in front of a waterfall. Not knowing where to put his arms. He looked like that now. Like a man who was trying to be seen and didn't quite know how. "Why didn't you just tell me?" she said. He said he didn't know how. She said, "We've been married 42 years. There's nothing you can't tell me." He didn't answer. He just kept holding her hand. After a while she felt him squeeze it. That night they slept in the same room for the first time in over a year. Nothing dramatic happened. They lay down beside each other. George reached for her hand first. She took it. Outside, the spring night was quiet. They stayed like that for a long time. It was enough. After that the distance slowly came down. It was not the same as it had been at 30 or 40 or even 60. Their bodies had changed. They had changed. But something that had been missing came back. And it came back because they had named it out loud instead of letting it sit. George stopped turning away. Betty stopped waking alone in the dark. One morning over coffee Betty said, "Why did it take you so long to say something?" George thought about it. Then he said, "I think I spent my whole life believing men weren't supposed to talk about things like that." Betty was quiet for a moment. Then she said, 42 years, George. There's nothing you can't say to me." He didn't answer. He just picked up his cup. But his ears were red. She noticed and said nothing, because she loved him and she understood. Closeness is not a function of the body. It is staying. It is not turning away. It is saying the shameful thing out loud instead of quietly disappearing. Long marriages have to learn new versions of nearness as the years pass. George needed over a year to find his way to that. What opened the door was the sound of his wife crying quietly on the couch beside him over a couple on television holding hands. George and Betty still sleep in the same room. Nothing dramatic about it. They are just there together. After 42 years of ordinary days. That is what they are rebuilding, one quiet night at a time. If this story stayed with you, please subscribe. There are lives like this one everywhere. Quietly working through what they cannot easily say. We will keep telling them. Thank you for listening all the way to the end.